jobs. They collect evidence. That's the part that involves camping in deserts and digging bones from the ground with dental picks. And they analyze evidence. That's what happens when they get all that stuff back to the laboratory, unwrap it, piece it together, and compare it with things that other paleontologists have found, as well as with living animals. Based on that analysis, they come up with a hypothesis, an idea that explains all the evidence. This is exactly what's been happening as paleontologists work to solve the case of birds and dinosaurs. Words to know. Evidence. Something that can be shown to support a proposed idea. In paleontology, the evidence is often from fossils, but important forms of evidence also come from other sources, such as the science of genetics and the study of living animals. Hypothesis, hypotheses. A hypothesis is a temporary conclusion used to explain certain facts. As more evidence is unearthed, a hypothesis might be either supported or rejected. The plural of hypothesis is hypotheses. In cases where there is more than one hypothesis, the one that makes the fewest complicated assumptions is considered most likely to be true. That's how science works. Are birds descended from dinosaurs? The idea that birds descended from dinosaurs has not always been as widely accepted among scientists as it is today. In the 1860s, British scientist Thomas Henry Huxley pointed to the similarities of the bones of birds and dinosaurs when the remains of Archaeopteryx, a bird that lived 150 million years ago, had just been discovered. This evidence, he said, supported the hypothesis that birds were the descendants of dinosaurs. Some scientists agreed with him, but others strongly opposed him. Why? Because many people did not accept the possibility that one species could change into another over time. At the root of the disagreement was British scientist Charles Darwin's theory that evolution, change over time, occurs by a mechanism called natural selection. He described how one species could descend or evolve from another over time in his book On the Origin of Species. Edward Cope, a well-known American paleontologist, and Huxley agreed that Darwin's theory of how evolution occurs explained how some dinosaurs could have gradually changed toward more bird-like forms and eventually into real birds, such as Archaeopteryx. Evidence. Archaeopteryx gave scientists the first evidence of what the earliest birds were like. Over millions of years, the bones of Archaeopteryx had been transformed into a fossil. Yet the fossil of Archaeopteryx was very unusual. The stone that surrounded the body of Archaeopteryx was so fine-grained that it preserved not only the bones, but impressions of its feathers as well. This was the first time feathers had been seen on a prehistoric creature. Otherwise, however, Archaeopteryx was very similar to small theropod dinosaurs, such as Compsognathus. Hypothesis 1. Archaeopteryx, with its sharp teeth, clawed fingers, and long bony tail, could easily be classified as a small dinosaur. Huxley, therefore, hypothesized that birds descended from dinosaurs. Hypothesis 2. Another British scientist of the time, Richard Owen, disagreed strongly with Darwin and Huxley's view of how one species could evolve from another over long periods of time. Instead of pointing to the similarities between dinosaurs and birds, he pointed at the differences. One proof that birds were clearly different from all other animals, he said, was that birds had feathers, and no other living thing did. Birds were members of the scientific classification Aves. Aves is the Latin word for birds, and dinosaurs were members of the scientific classification Reptilia, where he himself had decided they belonged 20 years before. Owen placed Archaeopteryx firmly